Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Our esteemed guests and participants from around the globe, welcome to our webinar of today on Decoding BRSR, a comprehensive understanding on BRSR Series 4, organized by Sustainability Reporting Standards Board of ICI. We are privileged to host this webinar. We would like to welcome you, our guest speaker and our chairperson, CA Siripriya Kumarji, and our CA Karan Gargji, past chairman, Ghaziabad branch of CIRC of ICI. Now we would like to request CA Karan Gargji to welcome our chairperson. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shweta ji. CA Sri Priya Kumar ji is a Central Council member of ICAI, Chairperson of Sustainability Reporting Standards Board, and Director of the Institute of Social Auditors of India. She also serves as the Vice Chair of the Corporate Laws and Corporate Governance Committee and the Professional Skills Enrichment Committee of ICAI. Over the last few years, she has served on various committees and boards of ICAI, making noteworthy contributions to the Corporate Laws Committee, the Expert Advisory Committee, and the Financial Review and Reporting Board. She is a registered insolvency practitioner and leads the corporate restructuring and insolvency practice. She was part of the working group constituted by the MCA for drafting the rules and regulations of bankruptcy and insolvency code. Additionally, she is a regular faculty member in training programs of ICAI and other accredited institutions, and she has also delivered over 300 lectures.
Thank you, Karan ji. And on behalf of the Sustainability Reporting Standards Board of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, I take great pleasure in extending a very warm and a very hearty welcome to you on understanding ESG and BRSR. And welcome specially to this edition 4. We've run a series of 4 webinars where we've tried to explain this entire concept of ESG and BRSR to you. Now, for those of you who have not attended the earlier webinars, the SRSB today will put out a simple brochure giving links to all the 4 recorded versions of these webinars so that you'll be able to gain a comprehensive understanding. I request the office to do it with just precisely these 4 videos, which would anyway be available on ICI TV and our channel, which is the channel of the SRSB. Now, for those who have not attended, just to have a grip on what we did in the last 3 webinars. So what's this thing about ESG? So if you look at the Enron crash, the world was primarily running after profits. So everybody said, if you can do sales numbers and deliver profits, then the world is yours. And corporates were choosing this path. Then Enron happened, and then they said, oh, governance is very important. So there were huge changes in governance, including the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, restrictions on auditors, etc., etc. And that sort of translated to our Companies Act 2013 also. Several new aspects came in: independent directors, governance, role of the board, role of auditors. Even this simple thing of proscribed services, restricted services came in later. And there's a very important thing called ICOFR, the internal controls over financial reporting. So there was this huge within the governance framework. Now, then there was this phase where, digital transformation took on this entire spectrum for a while, and it continues to be a dominant theme. But in the last few years, what's possibly been the most dominant theme that started governing not just the large companies, but even MSMEs, I would think, is this concept of ESG. So from prosperity and profits, people said you need to have people, take care of your people who work with you, the stakeholder ecosystem, the prosperity aspect. So it was people, planet, and prosperity. And planet is how are we going to safeguard this planet and leave at least a similar planet what we inherited by not degrading it further. So when this whole dialogue changed to aspects of sustainability, they said, okay, we need to have 3 things, all of what I spoke put in together. It's called ESG, environment, social, and governance. Environment is how do you ensure responsible, and in our context, we'll talk about corporate behavior in enabling a sustainable environment. S for social, how do we take care of diversity? How do we take care of inclusion? What are corporates doing for their employees? I mean, how well are the unions handled? Because collective positioning is also very important. How do organizations foster and encourage these social aspects in their growth story? And the third is governance, which is fairly well enshrined. So, what happened the world over? So, the United Nations came up with 17 sustainability reporting goals. And they said, okay, see, for anything, you need to have some parameters, right? So, for example, if you have to be a chartered accountant, one important parameter is you have to qualify the exam. So, and then there are building blocks for any of this. If you want to be a better person, then you need to do skill development courses. So, the United Nations said, okay, let's have 17 goals and let all of us work towards these goals, which were thoroughly researched and said, okay, this will make for a better environment. Now, quickly fast forwarding to India. Now, all this ESG reporting, by whatever name it is called, is directed at these 17 goals. Now, if you fast forward it and narrow it to the Indian context, India had something called as the principles of NGBRC, the National Guidelines for Responsible Business Conduct. There are 9 principles, and these 9 principles are aligned to the 17 UNDP goals. So India built a separate framework of goals that we wanted to accomplish. Now, these 9 principles are, we must have respect for the environment, we must treat everybody fairly. These are the goals. Now, in India, you had basically 2 reporting frameworks. One was called as the integrated reporting, which SEBI had asked the top 500 listed companies to voluntarily look at it. Now, for this context, you must look at the integrated report of some company, like let's say the Levers or ITC, to see what are the building blocks of these reports. Now, this integrated report is actually built on certain types of capital: intellectual capital, human capital, financial capital, etc. These are the capitals that the company or the corporate employs for what joy? To give benefit to your stakeholders. Social capital, environmental capital. How have I benefited? So, financial capital provided by my shareholders, I have given them so much profit, so much dividend. Now, one was the integrated reporting, and it was supposed to be done under the IIRC framework. There's something called as the International Integrated Reporting Council and the framework. Then India came up with something called as the BRR, the Business Responsibility Reporting, which has now become the BRSR. Now, what does the BRSR say? The BRSR says, okay, there are 3 sections on which we want the top 1,000 listed corporates to report. Is it voluntary or mandatory? It's mandatory for the top 1,000 listed corporates. Now, the government also felt, okay, the company is reporting, but who will do the assurance? So they said, okay, let's implement assurance also. But then it would have been too unwieldy, because in these 3 sections, you have about 135 parameters on which companies report. So they said, we will give you a narrow format for assurance. And that is called as the BRSR core. So they took these 9 principles on which the BRSR has been built. And then for these 9 principles, they asked a set of pointed questions, which were also there in the BRSR. And they said, for the top 150 listed companies for this year, please provide assurance. And what's the assurance? We all know there are 2 types of assurance. One is limited and one is reasonable. Reasonable is a higher level of assurance. And so for the top 150 listed companies, they said, please do reasonable assurance mandatorily for these companies on the BRSR. So as it stands, all the 1,000 companies which are listed, and some others can also adopt it voluntarily, have to report their BRSR and BRSR core. And the top 150 companies have to get the BRSR core done for assurance in a reasonable assurance framework. Now, In the 4 webinars that I spoke about, including this one today, what did we talk about? We spoke about these UNDP goals. What is ESG? What is ESG reporting? And then we went into BRSR in a big way. We first spoke about all the 9 principles of BRSR, and very pointedly, we have come up with what exactly is the content of the BRSR. What are the questions which are aligned to these principles in the 3 sections? And we started talking about it. And today is the last of the series where all the principles are being taken care of to conclude this series. So if you go through these 4 editions, you will get it all. Now, I also understand one thing. The audience that I'm speaking to today will include preparers of large corporates, preparers of the top 1,000 companies who are required to mandatorily do it. And even in the top 1,000, if you notice that the density or the concentration of the really large companies is at the top, and they'd have enough resources and to do these things. But for the lesser, the lower down in the market cap, the top 1,000 companies, this webinar would also be helpful. The second is there would be assurers, people who are performing assurance engagements or who want to perform assurance engagements. Now, you might ask me one question. Say, I'm a chartered accountant working for an MSME, or I could be a chartered accountant doing assurance or looking to advise an MSME. How is it important for me? Why should I at all get into ESG? I'm doing my accounting, I'm doing my audit, I'm doing my GST practice, I'm doing my income tax practice. What is important to me? I think there is a big piece in the MSME space, which is why I think it's important that each one of us, the 4 lakh members, have to understand ESG at least in a basic way. Now, let me now take the next few minutes to explain why this becomes relevant for MSMEs. Now, in addition to the company having to report for itself, how much water did I use? How much electricity did I consume? They are also looking at value chain partners. Who are the value chain partners? They are the customers or the suppliers of an entity. So it's important, and value chain reporting and assurance is also mandatory from the next year onwards. Now, if you're an advisor to an MSME, now imagine a large corporate. Will I take somebody as my partner who's complying or who's not complying? Now today, so organizations will start picking value chain partners who are complying with this GSG parameters. Now, world over, for example, if you take banking and financial services company, let me also just step one back. There is something called scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emission. Scope 1 is what is directly, done by the company in terms of the carbon dioxide emissions. So I am a company running a foundry, or I could be a car making company. So I, for example, use foundry parts where there's a lot of, gas involved or coal involved to fire the furnace. So that's my scope 1 emission, what I emit directly. Scope 2, I go buy electricity. Now, using electricity is also bad because that electricity generating company is burning some fossil fuel or something to generate that electricity, which is releasing carbon dioxide. So ultimately, all this is measured in terms of the CO2 that we release in the environment. Scope 3 are the emissions that come from value chain partners. Not just in the context of emissions, how many disabled people do I employ as an organization? How many is my value chain partner doing? Do I have PF, ESI insurance coverage? Does my value chain partner also have the coverage? Because you will notice that in certain sectors like cement, value chain contributions are 16% of the emissions. But if you take a banking company, the value chain, contribution to the entire ESG framework in terms of emissions will be something like 99%. So if you are advising an MSME, There are three aspects to it. First is the ability of the MSME to be competitive in an ESG context. The second, if you're MSME that you're advising, or you are an MSME that's an exporter. See, countries like US, India are a little, slightly lesser on this ESG framework, but the Europe is very ahead. Europe is in fact proposing something called as a carbon border adjustment mechanism, where they say that, look, we are going to invest a lot of money in becoming environmentally clean. So if Europe is going to invest a lot of capital in this, then their cost of production will go up. Their products will become more expensive. So if somebody from China or India, is selling to Europe, they are proposing a sort of an impact tax. Now that's currently coming only for 3 sectors, but if you have supplies from India going abroad and you're an exporter, one has to be environmentally conscious. So first is to beat local competition, and MSME has to get ready. Second, to continue to export, one has to be ready. Now I spoke about the risk here. Now there's also an opportunity. In India, this green finance is coming up in a big way. For an MSME to go and take this advantage of green finance quickly, which will come at possibly lower rates, better tenors, etc., then you need to be ESG aware and ESG compliant. It's in this context, in fact, one of the large focus areas. So the SRSB work, of course, we are providing a lot of inputs on standards. Now you will come back and say, okay, Priya, you had spoken and said, okay, I have to do reporting, but there has to be a standard, right, to report. In India, the standard is BRSR. We report in BRSR or the integrated reporting. Worldwide, the International Sustainability Board, which is a part of, a subset of IFAC, has come up with the S1 and S2 standards on reporting, which India is yet to adopt. So the first thing that the board is doing is we're doing a lot of work on S1 and S2 standards, so which are yet to be adopted, but we have BRSR. The second aspect is on assurance. Now, again, there are 2 standards on assurance, which has also been adopted by ICAI. It's SSAE 3000 and SSAE 3410. 410 is only on greenhouse gas emissions. How do we certify that part? How do we assure that part? And 3000 is the general standard. Now, the SRSB is also highly involved in this aspect of trying to demystify these standards and come up with guides on how to implement. And we're also working on what is being proposed as a big standard in the sustainability space, which is currently called as the Exposure Draft 5000. Now, these 2 we reckon will be largely helpful for the preparers and the assurers. But what we are most interested, both in the context of the fraternity and the country, is how do we handhold the MSME journey? How do we enable our chartered accountants to serve as business advisors in an MSME journey of higher levels of compliance? Because it's MSMEs and the second level, the value chain partners, who account for a major portion of the emissions. And India is a country that's dominated by micro, medium, and small enterprises. And I think they account for a very large part of the GDP as well. And we have about 6.5 crore MSMEs in India. And I reckon that a good 1.5 will be SMEs and not the micro. So it's in this context that we have this webinar here today. And I'd like to place on record my sincerest appreciation to the speaker for the day, CA Harsha Ramnani, who's been with us right from the inception of this board, and to guide us and help us on several aspects, including the BRSR certificate course material. I would also kindly request all of you to enroll in the BRSR certificate course, more in terms of a learning. It's very, very valuable learning because it walks you through this entire journey, which I have now presented to you in a nutshell in the last 15 minutes. I'm also very thankful to the event enablers of today who've been here to help us with this webinar. And it's over to Harsha Ramnani and a special thanks to CA Karan Garg, the past chairperson of the Ghaziabad branch. We felt that it's not enough, if just the board and the speaker participate. We felt it's very important for the larger fraternity. Now, Karan Garg ji has a wide influence and a network. So he will carry this message through the entire Ghaziabad branch. Would also like to place on record my sincerest appreciation to my vice chairman, CA Dr. Anuj Goyal, who's unable to join us today, but whose support in the board and the activities have been exemplary and terrific. Thank you very, very much, and it's over to Karanji.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well.
Thank you, ma'am. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed chairperson for delivering an insightful and comprehensive address. Your in-depth understanding on BRSR framework have been invaluable. Thank you for your leadership and share your expertise with us, ma'am, today. Now, moving on further, we would like to request the CA Aparna Gupta ji, to introduce our guest speaker today. Over to you, Aparna, ma'am. Ma'am, you are on mute. Ma'am, you are on mute. Ma'am, we are unable to hear you, Aparna, ma'am. You are on mute.
I'm so sorry. Welcome, Harsha ma'am, CA Harsha Ramrani ma'am. She is a fellow member of ICAI with a diploma in information systems, audit and top-ranking commerce degree from Kanoria Girls College, Jaipur. A registered valuer for securities and financial assets. She holds certificates in FAFD, internal audit, Ind AS, BRSR, and public finance and government accounting. With over 15 years of experience, she specializes in auditing across diverse industries, and she is a faculty member for various ICA courses. She has an international exposure in countries including the USA, EU, and more. Thank you so much, ma'am, for coming.
Yeah.
I would like to hand over.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aparna. I hope I'm clearly audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So, thank you so much, first of all, to SRSB, Shweta ma'am and Sri Priya ma'am, who has properly covered all the aspect of the sustainability reporting and why we are having these series for the benefit of across, the large of members of ICAI. So, we are on today the fourth of series, where we are going to understand the remaining principles of the BRSR. And after that, we will cover about assurance aspect, which will more about that exactly how it is being introduced, and being a chartered accountant, how we can be, actively participate in a assurance engagements, because you will agree with me that if it comes as a assurance or a audit, the only name which comes in a mind is a chartered accountant. Without CA audit and assurance, something we find it's very difficult, or somewhere we are not try to incline towards that, okay, it is being done properly. So that is the reason, although this particular assurance domain is open for across different professionals, still I feel that we as a chartered accountants are having more opportunities. We as a chartered accountants are more capable enough to do that assurance, because the a sense of the assurance, the importance of the assurance, we more understand being a professional. So just let me share my screen. Shweta ma'am, I need a request. I request for screen sharing. It is saying.
Yes, ma'am.
And meanwhile, I'll request coordinators and the committee that whatever queries you get in a question answer box during the session, just feel free to share with me. I will try to respond as soon as you can, you are sharing the queries with me. Yeah, chat box or maybe Q&A box you can use for the same. Yeah, now I can share my screen. Thank you. So without wasting much time, and I'm not going to cover the initial introduction part because that has already been covered by the Sripriya ma'am effectively, and will not waste much time just to understand the previous. So we'll start directly with the topics where we need to understand. So I think this particular BRSR key elements framework is clear to all the participants who are there, that how it is being structured. This is a replacement of the BRR report. Right now, it is mandatory for top 1,000 listed company. Reporting is mandatory for top 1,000 listed company. How we will see the top 1,000? So it is by market capitalization. If I go by with the format, so the earlier BRR format was little bit just a tick box exercise, whereas the current format, which generally being used by companies for BRSR reporting, it is having quantitative as well as qualitative indicators. And all these indicators are again divided in two sections, which is essential and a leadership. I hope previous faculties already covered the difference between essential and the leadership. So essential is the mandatory to report, and leadership is up to the company, whether they want to opt in, voluntarily they want to report that, or they just want to skip, or maybe can have plan to report in a near future. The very good part is that we are having a guidance note with us, which is being issued by SEBI, that how they are expecting the BRSR report from a company side, the BRSR disclosures from the company side. So wherever as a company, as a consultant, or maybe the company people, or maybe the relevant person who are right now working on the preparation of the BRSR disclosure, we just need to refer the guidance note very effectively. We just need to see in a guidance note what exactly they are expecting in terms of disclosure. Recently, last month only, they have also issued one circular where they mentioned about few pointers that what they were expecting with particular disclosure, and whereas companies are not able to give a proper disclosure on that part. So again, a clarification guidance they have issued last month only, which we should use when wherever we are involved in the preparation. We are also having a 39 sectorial guides which is being issued by NSC, and that particular sectorial guide of BRSR is integrated with different other global reporting framework, which is GRI, SASB, TCFD, integrated reporting, and one more part. So 5 global reporting framework they have covered in terms of cross-reference, where if you want to opt in a particular global reporting framework as well, that you can have, and cross-reference can be given to the BRSR report. And for unlisted company, as I think you all know, that we are having a light version as well, which we mention as a BRSR light, that can be used initially to make themselves understand what exactly it means as a BRSR reporting, and what is the expectation of a MCA or other regulatory department. So this part currently I'm skipping. Just 3 sections as mentioned by the Sripriya ma'am. We are having in a BRSR report A, B, and C. Today in C section, we are going to cover 7, 8, and 9 principle, because up to 6 principle has already been covered in a previous series. 6 principle, we will have a revision part, little bit, that how it is being expected from a company in terms of principle 6 disclosure, and rest 3 principle, remaining 3 principles, 7, 8, and 9, we will cover in detail what is the expectation and what we need to do in terms of reporting. So just to revise with the principle 6, what exactly is the principle 6? It is about the environmental aspect. And probably as a chartered accountants, we find this particular principle is very difficult for us, because earlier we were not more involved in the operation aspect, other than if we are having that kind of the KRA or that kind of the background. And when it's come to, making disclosures with respect to the environmental aspect, with respect to the emission aspect, waste aspect, so something technical aspect also we need to understand, some technical formulas we need to understand. So I think with a screen, it is clear to all the participants who are present here that this principle is expecting a reporting from our side which means from a BRSR reporting side. On energy aspect, where mainly they are asking for consumption details, intensity detail, and a PAT detail. They also want detail, whatever details we are submitting in terms of consumption. So they want us a breakup in terms of how much electricity has been consumed from a renewable sources and how much electricity has been consumed from a non-renewable sources. So renewable and non-renewable breakup is required for each and every reporting. Similar to the water aspect, where withdrawal from a different resources and consumption, zero liquid discharge responsibility regulation, that reporting has been requested in this principle. And discharge by the destination and the level of treatment in terms of water stressed area. So in case your plant is coming under the list of water stressed area, where you will find the list of water stressed area, so it is on a government portal, which you can check whether your area is within water stressed or out of water area, and accordingly you need to make your disclosure. Air emission, so different kind of the gases emission here we need to cover, like NOx, SOx, PM, POP, and assurance if we are taking as a company on all these air emission aspects, so that reporting we need to give here. Similarly, greenhouse gas emission, so 3 scopes are there, scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 1 and 2 is the mandatory for reporting, and 3 is currently in a voluntarily indicators, where we need to give details about the greenhouse gas emission. And the important aspect is that for these details, companies should have first accounting system within their organization for greenhouse gas emission and saving on a footprint, carbon footprint. Waste management also we need to cover in principle 6, where plastic, e-waste, biomedical waste, construction, battery, all other type of the waste we need to give detail. That details needs to be bifurcated in hazardous and non-hazardous, how much percentage is recycled, reused, disposed of, what is the waste management strategy. All these are pointers covered in a essential indicators. Similarly, in a leadership indicator, they specifically asked about direct, indirect impact on the entity on biodiversity and other measures. And at last, in this particular principle, we need to cover about the impact, that whatever the manufacturing activity we are having, what is the impact on the environment, what is the impact on the compliance aspect. So that here in terms of impact, we need to give. This particular principle in a BRSR is lengthy, which required a lot time from our side to understand, and more important for the manufacturing entities. For service entities, for other trading entities, probably this principle maximum of the section will be not applicable. But in manufacturing entities, this principle is having a significance, more importance, where we need to cover all these aspects. And actually regulators, other government bodies are wanted to see this particular principle more in detail, that what exactly organization is doing to restore the environment in an effective manner. So this a small slide just to understand scope 1, 2, and 3. I hope you already had a detailed discussion in a previous session. So just to cover up or revise that, scope 1 is, which is a direct emission from a company's activities, from a company's facilities or a vehicle, that we normally cover in a scope 1. Scope 2 is about the indirect emission from electricity purchased or used by the organization. Emissions normally, we are creating in terms of whenever we are having a production line or a production facility, production of the energy, and eventually used by the organization. So scope 2, you will see that purchase electricity, steam, heating, cooling for own purpose for production facilities, normally being covered in a scope 2 emission. How normally we find it? So like purchase of goods and services, that is being, emission considered in a scope 3. Scope 2 only where we are buying electricity from a grid or from a government, and that we are using for our production facility. Scope 3, which is having a lot activities and emission calculation is little bit more time consuming, where this is again an indirect emission from other activities which is being run for the organization, occurring from different sources, whether that are in control of the organization or are not in control of the organization. So there are again few activities, normally some upstream activities and downstream activities. Upstream activities includes your purchase of goods and services, the capital goods, your fuel energy purchase, transportation distribution, waste from operation, business travel of the company officials, employee commuting. So from office to home, home to office, the employee commute is also considered in a scope 3 emission, leased asset, etc. Whereas in a downstream, so investment, franchisees, lease asset, use of the sold product, all these activities are considered in the downstream activities. Now we come on a principle 7, which is we are going to discuss in detail for today's session. What is a principle 7? So principle 7 is businesses when engaging in influencing public and a regulatory policy should do so in a manner that is responsible and a transparent. What exactly they want to convey from this principle, that if as an organization you are in an influencing position, you can influence the government decision, you can influence the regulatory decisions, you can influence the industry decisions, the chambers decision. So that influencing should be done in a transparent and a responsible manner and should not only be used for their own business purpose. The SDGs which are linked with this principle 7 are principle 1, SDG 1, 7, 14, 10, 11 and 17. And the questions that normally being asked in this particular principle is, if I talk about essential indicators, so first they are asking about affiliation with the trade and industry chamber association. As a business, how many affiliations you are having and at what position you are serving them. Second, details about corrective actions which is being undertaken for anti-competitive conduct. Because here we are talking about influencing position. So normally which is being observed in past, that if business is an influencing position, then generally being think about first themselves and then for rest of the industry. What should happen if I talk about in a general scenario? Whatever influencing you are doing or whatever representation as a business you are doing to any of the government regular authority or a regulator authority, it should be beneficial for the industry at large, not only for your business. So that aspect we need to cover in this principle. And this is just a screenshot where you can see that first question, which normally we just covered, that first they are asking about affiliations, how many affiliations we are having. Then they are asking to list top 10 trade and chambers where we are member or affiliated. So for example, if your business is associated with 20 or 30 plus trade or chambers, so you need to give the top 10 industry chambers where you are affiliated or a member, and you also need to give your position, that at what position as a business you are serving to these affiliations of the trade and industry chambers. Second, they are talking about anti-competitive conduct of the entity. So if in a previous year you have received any complaint with respect to or any issue with respect to the competitive conduct of the entity, in that case you need to give a details about that, name of the authority where this issue was raised, where the concern was raised, what was the exact case, brief of the case we need to give, and then as a company what corrective action we have taken for the same, that corrective action we need to report here. In a leadership indicator, we just need to add here the details of public policy positions advocated by entity, wherever you represented the industry, wherever you represented a particular aspect. So that representation details you need to give here. And from a format, I think it is very clear that how detailed information they wanted from company side, like they wanted which particular policy we advocated, what was the method restore for such advocacy, whether the information is available on the public domain or not. If it is not available on the public domain, then in that case you need to give a brief of that information, that what you have represented. Then frequency of review by board, that what board is, how many, what is the frequency, whether they are reviewing quarterly, half yearly, annually, or any other tenure. And if it is available in public domain, so in that case we need to give a web link of the same as well. Come as a principle 8, which talks about to promote inclusive growth and a equitable development. So if you can recall all the previous principles, so it started from the company's integrity, accountability, and a transparent conduct overall, like whether company is having the ESG policy or not, is there any penalty which is being paid by the company in previous year for unethical conduct or not. All these we covered in a principle 1. Then it's come to the goods part, then employee. After that, it comes on a human right, then environment aspect. Then we talk about other industry people. And now again, we are summing up our BRSR report, where we are talking about inclusive growth and equitable development, which means as a company, we should not only think about our own profits, our own top line or a bottom line. Say Priya ma'am already covered about that earlier. The discussion was how much profit company is earning. So that was the parameter for any of the company, whether it is surviving in the market or not. But the now discussion has been completely changed. We are not only talking about one bottom line, which is profit, or only about top line or a bottom line, like how much revenue, how much profit. Now we are more talking about triple bottom line approach, that with profit, with economic benefits, how much we are contributing to the environmental aspect and on a social aspect. So this principle 8 is more or less covering that triple bottom line approach, where in essential indicators, it is talking about a social impact assessment of the project, which is undertaken by the entity, whether the assessment has been done by the independent agency or not. If yes, the details of that assessment we need to give in a BRSR report. Again, whatever the grievances we are receiving from the community at large or from wherever we are getting, what is the mechanism that how we are addressing the same. And third important aspect, which is going to change a particular process of the company, percentage of the input material sourced from a supplier. And here, what type of the supplier? One is MSME, and second, whether they are ESG compliant or not. Because if you are giving more opportunity to the MSME supplier, then only you are taking participation of the inclusive growth. Okay. So currently, if I talk about vendor management system of the company, in vendor management system, whenever the vendor is onboarded on the company, we are having a vendor introduction form on a year or a 2-year basis. We are also having renewal forms. So in that introduction form and a renewal forms, currently we are having details about whether vendor is registered under MSME category or not. And reason why we are having this categorization, because now balance sheet is specifically asking our outstanding with trade payables for MSME vendor and other than MSME. Before that, we were not having that bifurcation because that was not required. So this part is being considered, but are we having any categorization whether the vendor is ESG compliant or not when we are onboarding any vendor on the platform? Probably answer is no. And that is the thing where we need to think, we need to realign our processes with the ESG requirement. So this is the format of BRSR report principle 8. So in essential indicator, as I mentioned, social impact assessment of the project, which is undertaken by the entity. If yes, then details we need to give in a respective format. What is the name and a brief of project, SIA notification number, date of notification, then whether conducted by any independent agency or not, what was the result, whether the result was communicated in a public domain or not, and a relevant web link. Similarly, like mechanism of receive and address the grievances, percentage of input. So here you can see in a format they are asking for directly sourced from MSME or a small producer. And that details also we need to give for current financial year as well as from previous financial year. So input to total inputs by value here we need to give, and source directly from within the district or a neighboring district. Wherever the company is working, they are having a plant. How much we are strengthening the nearby area, how much opportunity we are giving to the nearby vendors or nearby suppliers to provide supplies to the company. So these two details they are asking in a essential indicator. Whereas in leadership indicator, if I go, so apart from the social impact assessment, which was the part of question number 1, they are also asking about CSR project details, whether your CSR project is undertaken by the entity, is designated to aspirational district or identified by the government bodies. Are you having your CSR expenditure aligned with the national priorities and state priorities? So this is something government wants to understand from a company side, because every company is having a certain budgets of the CSR as per Companies Act provision. Now, government authorities, regulatories want companies to spend that amount on national priorities and state priorities. And again, on a Niti Aayog website, they have a complete list. What are the national priorities? What are the state priorities? Where as a company, you can take up any of the priorities and you can choose to spend your CSR on that part, where as with your CSR, you are also somewhere serving the state requirements, which is being requested by the government, and they have already given the list details of on a government portal. So that details we need to give. Then they are asking, do you have a preferential procurement policy? So as a company, every company is having a procurement policy. They are having certain rules and regulations that has been followed, that has been required to followed by the procurement department. But in that procurement policy, there is nowhere clause currently you will find for a preferential procurement from a MSME vendors or marginal groups or a vulnerable groups. So again, that procurement policy needs amendment, and where you as a consultant or as expert, you can help companies that how we can make a preferential procurement policy. From which marginal vulnerables do you procure? That list also we need to add here, and the percentage of total procurement, if it is being done in a previous year, that percentage we need to cover. And then few details about your CSR projects. What are the list of your CSR projects where company is spending, number of the people who are benefited from the CSR project, and number of the beneficiaries from again marginal groups or underserved communities as you serve through your CSR project. Any query till now? If any of the coordinator, please confirm me. Okay. So the last principle is here, which is talking about consumers. So that what I understand, normally business is being, consumer is always a king, and they are always priority for us. And that is the reason whenever this BRSR format is being designed, regulatory has been considered this as a last principle, because that has always been seen that companies are always taking care of their consumers, their clients, customers who are, using their products or services. So in principle 9, it is more being asked about percentage of the product with environmental and social parameters, safe and responsible use. So in FMCG industry, this particular question is more important, because this is talking about whether your product is having a complete detail about safe procurement, consumption of the product or not. Then they are talking about consumer complaints, how many consumer complaints is being received in a previous year or a reporting year, and how company has responded to that complaints. and a corrective action on issues related to the product delivery. So if there is any particular delivery issues which is being received in past, so how they are taking care of that. So this is the format where key focus area is about product safety and a customer satisfaction, where in an essential indicator, first they are talking about how we are, what is the mechanism we are having for consumer complaints and a feedback, the turnover of the product and services, which is having a complete details about safe and responsible usage, the recycling and the safe disposable, the relevant details about the environmental aspect and the social parameters, number of the consumer complaints which is being received in past. And for this particular section in last month, the circular which I was mentioning, they asked that all the companies are mentioning their complaints in another column and they are not using the previous, respective sections. Like they have given a respective section of data privacy, advertisement, cyber security, unfair and restrictive trade practices, and then others. So in maximum cases, others column is only being filled and rest of the columns are not being filled by the companies. So this year, NSE specifically requested to companies to consider bifurcation of all the complaints with the respective areas. And somewhere, if you are not finding the relevant, above section as a relevant one to report the consumer complaints which you have been received. So in case of others, you need to mention that in others, what are the major incident or what are the major complaints that has been received by the company. Then fourth is about detail of the instances of the product recall on account of safety issue. So these type of the incident probably we will see in automobile industry or maybe in a other relevant industry where if particular technical issue is not being resolved, so in that case, product needs to be recalled from the market on a safety issues. So where again, you need to give details about how it was voluntarily recall or a forced recall, how many numbers it happened and the reason of the recall. Then entities having a framework policy of the cybersecurity risk related to the data privacy. So that we need to give an essential indicator. Similarly, on a leadership indicator, if I go, so they are asking whether channel or platform where the information of the product and services can be accessed. So if company is having any particular, web channel or a platform where they are introducing their products and services, so that web link we need to provide. And this particular leadership indicator is being responded by many of the companies. Steps taken for inform or educate customer about safe and responsible usage, mechanism to inform consumer for any risk, display product information over on the product over and above, which is mandated as per local law. And then last, they are talking about data breaches, the information like data privacy law. Now we have active. So instances of the data breaches and the percentage of data breaches involving personal identifiable information. So this particular principal leadership indicators are mostly being responded because maximum time companies are following and they are having details. But otherwise in other remaining principle, there are many time question has been asked that whether if we are having a response of one or two indicator of leadership and rest of indicator we do not want to respond, can we do that? So answer is yes. For example, out of 5, if you want to report or if you want to disclose only 2, which is 2 or 3, so that you can choose as per your requirement, and rest 3 you can skip for the reporting purpose. So when we are concluding all the principles, these are the broad challenges which I consider that maximum of industry people or practitioner that they have faced during their ESG reporting, because these are the initial years. So obviously few challenges will come up, and later on when this particular reporting will be matured or we all understand more about this reporting aspect, so these challenges will be reduced in near future. So the first category is about data collection. reason why we are facing more difficulty in a data collection, because earlier we were not aware about these type of the reporting, and recently it is being introduced and mandatory for top 1000 listed companies. So the current MIS structure or a current reporting which company is having, it's not gathering or collecting all these non-financial information on a regular basis. So that is the reason it normally takes more time when we are requesting all these type of data for the reporting aspect, and many follow-ups to capture the data is being required. Once the MIS system of the non-financial information will be established in all the organization, this particular challenge will be addressed in near future. Second is about expectation settings. So again, it is the third year of the reporting. Previous year was the mandatory year of the reporting, and 21-22 was the voluntary year. So practically second year of the mandatory reporting, but third year of the reporting. So companies are also understanding the regulation, the reporting requirement, the expectation, and government is also trying to make their expectation clear that what exactly they want from a company side in terms of BRSR reporting. So they are also issuing the guidance note, the circulars where they are finding mistakes, clarifications, etc. So practice, initiative, action plan, KPIs, everything will be set in near future. Companies are also trying to understand that which particular area is more relevant for them. Like for example, if I talk about NBFC, so for NBFC, environmental aspect will be less relevant because they are in service industry, they are providing finance to the micro businesses. Which particular area you find more relevant for them? It is about social and their consumer practice, because their service or their loan facility is for the is considered normally being microfinance, because most of the NBFCs are set up for the microfinance requirement only. How they are serving to their customers, how they are taking care of the community, how they are analyzing the business, all these are the important ones. So once the company will understand what are the important pointers for them in terms of ESG reporting or implementation, then only expectation setting will be done in a proper manner. One-way communication. So currently this reporting is again new for the some of the department. So delay in department interaction, because earlier they were not aware about these type of the reportings and it was not a part of their KRA, recently being added. So that one-way communication will change in two-way communication on next 1 to 2 years. Data validation. So this is most important because it is an initial year where we are collecting all these non-financial information from a different department, which were not earlier part of all these exercise. So validation of these data is most important aspect, and probably that is the reason assurance is also being introduced by the authorities recently, so that companies generally take responsibility of the data validation. They understand that why it is important to report a correct data in a public domain and how we need to take care of that. So by 26-27 financial year, the assurance will be mandatory for top 1000 listed company. So in that case, at least I can say that for that top 1000 listed company, data validation process will be there, practice will be there, and similar practice can be followed by the rest of remaining of the listed companies, and private limited companies can also work on that footstep. Language expectation. So currently, if you read BRSR reports, you will find few responses very short, not giving a complete details about which is being asked in a BRSR reporting, and that is something we need to see whenever we are in a group of preparation of BRSR report. So exactly we need to understand what is being requested and asked in a query or an indicator and how we need to respond that. Your qualitative aspect you need to take care, complete statement or a complete response aspect we need to take care. Ownership of proofreading, so that now is being taken care by maximum of the companies, and companies are taking more concern and understand the importance if it is being not reported because it is a part of your annual report, and non-clarity on the leadership indicators. So currently, many of the companies are not clear about their leadership indicators, and they are just skipping, consider that it is voluntary, but they are not understanding the government aspect, that why it is being considered for the time being as a leadership indicator, because this is something they are expecting from us as a company to follow, but they understand maybe currently we are not ready for the same, so they want us to start preparation for the same. So if as a company you are not doing anything from any of the leadership indicator, that doesn't mean you should skip as it is. We also need to think about that what strategy we can make, how we can start planning on the same, and how we can start implementation of the same. So that we need to understand. So any query or any doubt from a BRSR reporting aspect or any of the principle, I can take right now. Coordinators, if you can help me with the query, so that will be great. Any query? Okay. So now we will start from an assurance approach and a methodology. Assurance, whenever the word came, it's always, emphasizing us, and we always see this as a new opportunity being a chartered accountant. So if I talk about assurance for a BRSR report or for ESG report or for sustainability report, so there can be a different scenario. BRSR is something which is mandatory for companies, top 1000 listed companies. Apart from that, company can also choose for sustainability reporting or ESG reporting, which means apart from BRSR requirement, if I want to use any other global reporting framework, so that can be used by the company. And if I want to take assurance on my sustainability report or ESG report, so that can also be considered. So currently, 3 frameworks are there: ISAE 3000, then ISAE 3410, and SSAE 3000, which is being issued by ICAI. ISAE 3000 is again in revision mode. So here currently I have kept as a 2013, but revised draft for the comment for 2023 is already being in a public. And once they will receive a comments on revised draft, so probably that 2013 will be replaced by 2023 or a 2024. So this is an international standard on the assurance engagement, and assurance engagement other than audit or review of historical financial information. So if you have been engaged for assurance other than financial information, this standard is applicable, and we need to report our our audit report as per ISAE 3000. And here we have given a set of basic principle and a procedure that how to conduct a non-financial assurance engagement. The standard was issued by IAASB, which is International Auditing and Assurance Standard Board. Similarly, we also have ISAE 3410, which is addressing a practitioner responsibility in identifying and responding to the risk of material misstatement in companies' reporting of greenhouse gas emission. So this particular standard is very specifically for greenhouse gas emission risk of material misstatement, and wherever you have been requested specifically for Principle 6 assurance for SAFE or for environmental aspect assurance only. So in that case, 3410 we need to use. Once BRSR was issued by the SEBI, so ICAI also come up with SSAE 3000, which is standard on sustainability assurance engagement, which is again an umbrella standard applicable on all type of the assurance engagement on a sustainability information. This standard was issued by SRSB of ICAI in January 2023, and currently it is mandatory to apply SSAE for the assurance report covering period ending on or after 31st March 2024. As Ripriya ma'am already mentioned in her initial introduction that when assurance was introduced for BRSR report, so currently for 150 companies, reasonable assurance is mandatory. So we need to understand what is the difference between limited assurance and a reasonable assurance. So there are two types of the assurance. One is limited and other one is the reasonable. By name only, it is clear that limited assurance is where practitioner is being requested for limited review of the data. So here, as a practitioner, what we do in a limited assurance, we gather a sufficient appropriate evidence to conclude the subject matter in possible circumstances and give a report in form of negative assurance. Whereas if I talk about reasonable assurance, so in that case, as a practitioner, we gather a sufficient appropriate evidence to conclude that the subject matters conform in all material aspect, and we identify the suitable criteria and give report in a positive assurance. So reasonable is having a greater responsibility on us. It is covering your all sustainability report, and we need to apply more audit procedures to give a reasonable assurance. Sufficiency means, so again, I think it is already being known by all of us being a chartered accountant practitioner. So it refers to the quantity of evidence that we obtained during the course of our assurance engagement, and whatever the evidence we are collecting, that as it is our professional judgment, our professional skepticism, whether it is being enough or not. How much enough depends on the risk profile that we are auditing and the circumstances of the engagement that we are performing. So it is completely up to you as a professional, up to your professional judgment, what is the meaning of sufficient or enough evidence. Currently in India, reasonable assurance being initiated directly for a BRSR core, and apart from requirement, the mandatory requirement up to company whether they want to have their assurance on a limited assurance or a reasonable assurance. There are few questions. So first question is about what techniques can improve communication and the collaboration across different departments and the teams for effective BRSR reporting. So as I said, it is just the initial years where companies are also understanding all these requirements, what exactly is being expected from a regulatory department to report. And because they were not having a proper MIS for their non-financial information, so that is being the reason communication collaboration is a little bit difficult. So just to address that issue, whenever you are working on any engagement, see if you can help companies to establish the MIS system for their non-financial information as well. Like for a normal business, we always have a yearly target. Once the financial year starts, we make a target that, okay, this is something sales that we want to achieve in financial year 24-25. This is something profit we want to get from financial year 24-25. So in similar aspect, first, we also need to have certain targets for non-financial achievements as well. Like this much emission we want to reduce, this much waste we need to manage, or this is something we want to achieve. Because once you have target, then only you start collecting information on a regular periodic basis. And based on that target, you can design the MIS, you can make department responsible for collection of that data. Regular review of that data can happen, and internal audits can also happen. So all these processes we need to establish for the non-financial information as well. Similar like we do in a financial information, similar line we need to implement for the non-financial. And for that, I think we can achieve the collaboration and communication effectively, because practically we implemented in few cases and the results are positives. Second question is, how can organization foster a culture of sustainability internally? So this is again up to the organization, because if I talk about sustainability practice, so normally what we say, like for business, it is always top to bottom. So in a similar case, sustainability also, it is always from top to bottom. Your top management should be understanding enough, and they should have a clear vision that in terms of sustainability, what we want to achieve. So tone at the top, again, most important. The middle part, the middle management should be more effective when it's come to the implementation of all these practices, because in maximum of the cases, why it has been failed, because middle management is somewhere not understanding the importance of sustainability aspect. So your middle management should be effective enough that why it is important. When it is being set at the tone at the top, they are guiding us like what exactly it's need to be done by the company. So now their responsibility how to implement the same in an organization. And when it's come to the bottom, the executive team, the team who are actually working on the ground, they should be responsible enough to follow the instruction. They should again responsible to make, they should be ready to make changes. Because why it is difficult on a bottom side, earlier there was having few set of buyers where we need to procure the material. Purchase department was settled enough. There is no additional efforts that they need to made. Now the situation changed. They need to revise their list. They need to find out few more vendors who are ESG compliant vendors, or they need to make aware their existing vendors why ESG practice is important, why these compliances are important, so the business can be continued. So these three segments we need to see how we are implementing. Top management should direct rightly to all the whole organization. Middle management should be ready to implement the same in an effective manner. Regular review, regular audits, we can say internal audits should happen. And the executive team, the bottom team should be ready for the change. They should adapt this change in a positive manner, that why it is important. Then only probably as an organization, you can foster a culture of sustainability internally. Otherwise, if any of the section is not working fine, either to top, middle, or bottom, then you will find difficulty in terms of establishing few targets for the company, then implementation part, then execution part, and then reporting of that aspect. Last question is, what strategies can be employed to gain buy-in from senior management and other key stakeholders for BRSR initiatives? If you can more elaborate this query, so probably that will help me to respond it properly, because otherwise I think I have already covered in question 2 how we can implement the same. So I'll wait for the detailed query, that what exactly we want to understand in terms of strategies that needs to be employed. Meanwhile, again, when we come up to the limited and a reasonable assurance, what exactly is the difference? So you can see common pros and cons. So if I talk about limited assurance, so it is least costly option compared to the reasonable assurance. And in maximum of the cases, company normally start with the limited assurance, because earlier they are also not having that much experience that how to report that and whether we will be able to get a clean report or not. Least resources involvement, because limited requirement is there. Cons are testing approach is based on the judgment of the practitioner, and it is not robust as much reasonable assurance. When it's come to the reasonable assurance, because we are covering whole of the sustainability report, so it is more robust in compared to the limited assurance of as similar to the audit of financial statement. But If I talk about cons, so initially it is costly, then the limited assurance, and when it is more robust, so obviously they will require more resources, more time from the company side as well. It will be a whole set of the audit that company also need to make sure that your practitioner can conduct. If hybrid option any of the company chooses, so that option is also available in case of voluntarily application of the assurance. So as a company, you can choose certain areas as a limited assurance and certain areas as a reasonable assurance. So it allows preparers to manage their cost. For example, as a manufacturing, I understand principle 6 is a most important principle. So for that, we can request for the reasonable assurance that cover every aspect of the principle 6. And for rest of the principle, we can request limited assurance. Limited assurance normally being called as a negative assurance or review, similar to like limited review report we are having for quarterly. Reasonable assurance is a kind of positive assurance which is covering all the areas, all the relevant aspect. Example is also given, like how we normally draft our opinion in terms of limited assurance and a reasonable assurance. So for example, if it is a limited one, how I will draft my opinion? Based on our review, nothing came to our attention that caused us to believe that scope 1 GHG emission for the year ended is not fairly stated. Here the line is nothing came to our attention, which means we are saying the within a reasonable limited proximity of our audit procedure that we have applied, we have not come across any of the attention, nothing to come our attention. Whereas when I draft my reasonable assurance report, how it is being stated our opinion? In our opinion, scope 1 GHG emission for the respective year are in all material aspect presented reliably and adequately in accordance with the corresponding assessment criteria. So here we are giving a positive assurance. The language, limited assurance is having a negative assurance and reasonable is having a positive tone of language. Again, some of the key differences. So if I talk about materiality, so here for materiality, there is no difference for limited or a reasonable one. It is a materiality that you, as a company, you decide which particular area is material for the purpose of reporting. Or second is understanding the underlying subject matter and the engagement circumstances. So in case of limited assurance, sufficient to identify areas where misstatement is likely to arise, and we consider the process used to prepare subject matter information. Whereas if I talk about reasonable assurance, so in that case, we are aimed to identify or assess the risk of material misstatement, similar to like we do in a financial statement. So again, we are having a greater responsibility as a practitioner. We are having a greater work to do where we require more understanding of the internal controls. We are having more requirements to evaluate the design of controls and other appropriated implementation. So that is the reason I always mention whenever we are having sessions on the BRSR, like government circular is saying by 26-27, reasonable assurance will be mandatory for BRSR code. This year is mandatory for first 150 company. 150 companies are always benchmark for rest of the listed companies, remaining of the listed company. So that is the reason government first put it the requirement of reasonable assurance for 150, because they understand they are already having the proper mechanism to collect all this information and to provide the same for reasonable assurance. Because as a practitioner, as a reasonable assurance provider, when I am on site to provide reasonable assurance on non-financial information, what will be my key requirements? What will be my key understanding or details that I'm expecting? Whether you are having a set of controls or not, whether you are having a ICNFR or not. Like for financial audit, we ask for ICFR, internal control for financial reporting. Similarly, for non-financial information, we will ask for ICNFR, which is internal controls for non-financial reporting. So the same RCM, everything we normally request to the company. When it is in place, then we ask whether you are having an internal audit mechanism or not. Someone is coming regularly, quarterly or a half-yearly to your organization to review whether the controls are working fine or not, adequate enough or not. After that only, as a reasonable assurance provider, I will be having more comfortable situation to review all required data, to frame my opinion and to provide the company. Otherwise, it is difficult. So now companies are in a phase where they are, first of all, drafting their MIS structure, because currently they are even not having regular collection of the data, which is being reviewed by their own internal management. So we cannot say whether the controls are there, audit is happening or not. Once they will start preparing the MIS on regular basis, then only someone can come and review whether the appropriate controls are there or not. If appropriate controls are not there, then few controls can be suggested to the non-financial information as well. Once appropriate controls are there, it is being implemented, then after only internal audit can happen, because without internal controls, internal audit cannot happen. And once you have at least 4 quarter reports of internal audit reports of non-financial information, then only company probably are ready for the external assurance and a reasonable assurance. So it is again a whole process of 2 to 3 years, and that is the reason being by 26-27 you will find all reasonable assurance report for top 1000 listed company. Response to risk. So in limited assurance, it's again differ from the nature extent where it is being requested, but evidence are normally less. Like that is the reason we are giving a negative assurance. Whereas in reasonable assurance, our procedures are more extensive. Our applications of the procedures are more detailed. We try to apply for not only one procedure but 2, 3, or 4 procedure as the case may be, and it is being required during course of reasonable assurance. A few more questions are here. What methodologies can be used to measure the long-term impact of sustainability initiatives? So to measure the long-term impact of sustainability initiative, I would suggest always refer SDG site, the Sustainable Development Goal website. So as initially it was mentioned that our BRSR is also linked with Sustainable Development Goals. As a globally, it is something, a target that we are trying to achieve, that these 17 targets we want to achieve. So if I want to measure my long-term impact, so that is something we need to take as a base. So when you go on the Sustainable Development Goals website, you will find that each and every goal is having certain targets, that this is something under this goal we want to achieve. For each target, they have also given the indicators that, for example, as a company, you have taken up, for example, target number 1 from SDG 4, which is for quality education. So if I taken up target number 1 from SDG 4, and now after 2 years and 3 years, I want to see whether impact has been caused or not. So I should see what can be the indicator. So that indicator also given on that website, and the criteria of that indicator also they have given on that website. So that is the reliable one which you can use to see the long-term impact on the sustainability initiative, because ultimately for each ESG reporting framework, sustainability reporting framework, target is to achieve the targets of Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals. So that is practically being used by us for many of the reports and being considered reasonable in maximum of the engagements. Other question is, for CAs, is there a certification required to issue assurance report under ISAE 3000? So answer is no, there is no specific certification is required, because our ICAI is a part of International Federation of this ISAE. So being a chartered accountant, we are we can opt this international standard also for preparation of report. The only thing is that we need to take care about reporting format, aspect, and all the procedures which is being listed in ISAE 3000 that should be used and applied during the course of our assurance engagement. But because ICAI is having a collaboration with IFAC, so in that case, we don't need any separate certification. So this is about the India landscape of the BRSR core assurance. So SEBI already issued a circular dated July 12, 2023, where they introduced the BRSR core, which is a summarized version of our BRSR disclosure reporting, which is having again 9 attributes for which KPIs are defined for the required assurance. 150 companies, financial year 23-24. This is the first financial year. You can see 150 companies assurance this year. I think Tata already issued their report, and remaining companies are now in a pipeline to issue their BRSR core assurance report. Then 250 by 24-25, 500 by 26-27, and top 1000 by 26-27. And in order to facilitate your verification process, so BRSR core is specifically given data and approach for reporting and assurance. So again here, SEBI is very clear what they are expecting from us being an assurance provider. You just need to follow the steps, follow the indicators, follow the approach of the reporting assurance which is being requested in a BRSR core. Then value chain also they
Harsha
have.
ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Harsha ma'am, can we take 5 minutes? Anuj sir is joined, yes.
Yeah, okay, ma'am. Okay.
Anuj sir, welcome, Anuj sir. Sir, you are on mute.
Yeah, thank you very much. Welcome, Harsha Ramnani ji. Thank you. Yeah.
Dear participants, we would like to welcome our Vice Chairman, Sir, CA Anuj Goyal ji, for this webinar. We would like to give a brief introduction about him. He has been an influential figure in the accounting and finance community, serving as a Central Council member of ICAI and as the chairman of multiple high-profile committees, including the Ethical Standard Board and the Professional Skill Enrichment Committee. His leadership extends to the publication and CDS Directorate and his past roles as chairman at the Ghaziabad chapter of ICSI and ICMA. With over 30 years of distinguished service, including 17 years as a Central Council, his contribution has been pivotal in shaping the profession. Sir is renowned not only for his extensive experience, but for his leadership also. We welcome you, sir. Welcome you to this webinar, and we request you to kindly address the participants, sir.
Thank you, Sweta ji and Harsha ji. I think one of the very, very prominent resource person. So I'm really very happy that our participants are there from each and every part of the world. I welcome our honorable members from India, outside India, to this very, very important series of webinar on decoding BRSR, a comprehensive understanding on BRSR. It is the series 3. And as Vice Chairman of the Sustainability Reporting Standard Board, we are trying our level best to see that how we can really do something very, very concrete for our mother nature, more better place to live for our future generations to come. And today, of course, we are discussing specifically Principle 7, 8, and 9 of Section C within the BRSR framework. And Harsha ji is the best faculty for that. And we are very well aware that these principles are very, very critical for understanding how businesses can contribute to a sustainable future. And friends, in today's dynamic business landscape, clear and reliable environmental sustainability disclosures are paramount. They not only enhance environmental responsibility, but also build stakeholders' trust and pave the way for sustainable growth. And the session of Harsha requirements and their effective integration into your organization's sustainability reporting. And we are, of course, having the event enablers, Karan Garg ji, Rakesh Singhal ji, and Aparna Gupta ji. And I will request all our honorable members, all our honorable delegates to raise their queries, and we will, at the end of the session, we will certainly try to respond your queries. And I'm quite confident that with the help and support of the resource persons like Harsha ji, we will be, of course, richer in our knowledge towards BRSR. And I think the chartered accountants are best suited to contribute in this very important sustainability reporting. And I'm really grateful to Sri Priya ji, our chairperson, and Sweta Goyal ji, our honorable secretary, for being very active and trying to do something very concrete for the profession, for all the members. I will not be taking your further time, as we are very eager once again to hear Harsha ji. So thank you very much. Over to Harsha ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to you, sir, for addressing us. And your leadership and significant contribution to the board is very important for us. Thank you for your leadership and your address, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Over to Harsha.
Over to you, Harsha ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Anuj sir, for your kind words and the motivation. So it's always motivate us more. And yes, we are trying to respond each and every query as and when it is being posted in a chat box. Thank you so much once again, sir, for your precious time with us. So I hope my screen is again visible to all the participants.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. So we were discussing about how the BRSR core assurance is started in India, the landscape. So now it's already being started, first year of few assurance report that we will see. They have also added few requirements for the value chain partner. So I can see one question in a chat box as well, which is the big question is convincing the SME how to do it when it is not mandatory. So by this circular, now you can see it is mandatory kind of thing, where the circular is saying that top 250 organizations, as per the market capitalization, they also need to ensure the compliance by their value chain partners to the extent it is attributable to their business with their value chain partners. So this next year will be the year where the remark is being given in a circular that as a company, we need to revert with respect to my value chain partners in terms of explain or comply. Either you explain why you are not able to comply that or comply. But after that, it is mandatory to comply. There is no option of explanation. So slowly, gradually, all these SME sectors are also being covered in this reporting, not in terms of mandatory reporting by any of the regulatory department or authority, but because of survival of their business. Because for these listed companies, now it is mandatory that all their supply chain management, all their vendors should also be part of ESG compliance. If they are not doing ESG compliance currently, they need to ensure that in near future they should comply with. Otherwise, they will not prefer you as a contributing partner in terms of their supply chain management. So if you want to continue your business with all these listed company as a SME player, ESG compliance is mandatory for you for survival of your business. As a MSME player, if I'm having a turnover of 10 CR or a 50 CR or a 100 CR, if I want to continue that 100 CR turnover with Reliance, with Tata, with Infosys, or any of the listed company which is in list of top 1000, so in that case, my ESG compliance is also mandatory. Otherwise, as a business, I will lose that part of my business which I am getting from all these listed company. So this is how government already being planned, how to cover all the aspect. And gradually also in near future, we will see few more notifications which will cover all the listed companies for BRSR disclosure, reporting disclosure. All listed companies gradually will also be covered for the assurance, and all the MSME player, other businesses, for them BRSR light version, at least for the corporate part, it will be mandatory. So gradually they will be covered. And from current year, how to convince, make them understand that for your business sustainability, for your revenue sustainability, this ESG compliance is mandatory. Otherwise, your revenue will not be sustainable in a near future. So I think this is something, a statement, whenever they hear from your side, they understand the importance and they start complying it, and they are actually complying it. In terms of who will provide the assurance, so here circular is saying ki board of the listed entity shall ensure the assurance provider of the BRSR core has the necessary expertise to undertake a reasonable assurance. So it is up to the board of company. They will decide who will provide the assurance. So there is no specific criteria. There is no specific benchmarking which is being introduced by any of the regulatory authority. That decision is completely on the board. They will decide whether I, being a chartered accountant or an ESG practitioner, competent enough or having a necessary expertise to provide reasonable assurance or not. And they also need to ensure that the assurance provider should not have any conflict of interest with their existing engagement which they are having with the same company. So how we understand that conflict of interest? So this independent restrictions on the assurance provider, which we need to understand how we see whether there is conflict of interest or not. So general rule is, as an assurance provider, sell its product or offers to any non-audit or non-assurance services to the listed entity or a group entity, irrespective whether the nature of product, services, financial or non-financial, they will not be eligible to undertake assurance of BRSR code. The same provision, the same principle that we follow for the financial audit, it is applicable on assurance of the non-financial information as well. So just for your help, a small summary that what are the activities that we can take as we are working for assurance provider of the BRSR core. What are the activities we cannot take or undertake, and boundary of the entities of which the restriction is applied. Any of query from all these sections that currently participant can post, and will try to respond as and when I can see the queries. So like you can see, the activities which are permissible is again same third-party certification, tax audit, system audit, or a tax filing. So if you are a statutory auditor of that company for financial information, you can also take a assurance of the BRSR core as well, because in that case there is no conflict of interest. You are external party, your independence is taken care. But if you are working for any company as a risk management consultant or a project management consultant, or maybe any other consulting services you are providing, advisory services you are providing, investment banking services you are providing, or you are a part of team who is designing or implementation of any information system, control system. So in that case, you are not external party, you are an internal party of the company, and you are not eligible to take a external engagement or external assurance. The boundaries, so listed entity is considered as a reporting entity, and other group entities that we need to consider is holding company, subsidiary company, associate, and a joint venture of the listed company. BRSR core indicator that we need to follow. So you can see that all attribute is being given here in second column, then parameter, how we need to review that, and nature of the indicator, whether it is non-financial or financial. So there are certain indicators, there are certain parameters which is requiring both type of the indicators, non-financial and financial, so that we need to understand and we need to review. And because of this BRSR core introduction in last year, BRSR reporting framework is also being amended last year. So this year, when you see top 1000 listed company BRSR reporting disclosure, you will find certain changes from previous year report. For example, the PPP calculation. So this was not a part of previous year BRSR report principle 6 because it was not requested in a previous. But when this BRSR core introduced, and this core attribute is talking about your scope 1 and 2 emission adjustment with revenue of operation adjusted for PPP, which is purchase price parity, the inflation part. So because of that requirement, similar amendment has been done in a BRSR disclosure framework as well, and you will find all these information in a framework itself. The 3 is about waste management. So like first attribute is also is from principle 6. Second attribute is from principle 6. Third attribute is also from principle 6. Fourth is also from principle 6. Then fifth is from employee well-being and safety. So this is from your principle 3. Enabling gender diversity in business, again from your principle 3. Fairness in engaging with customers and the suppliers. What exactly, from which particular principle you can relate this attribute? Any idea? That this is something we can find. So this is about principle 9, because here we are talking about customers. So breaches of data of the customers, number of the accounts payable, whether we are paying on time. So here they are asking about number of days of accounts payable. What is your turnover? How many days you are paying? But they are not asking about in how many days you are receiving your payment, because this is something you are already taking care of, that your average receivable number should be on a lower side, because everything is dependent on the same, your bank financing, your working capital management, everything. But earlier we were not more concerned about our accounts payable number of days, and it is being seen that late payment was made. Before MSME, it was very difficult for the small players to get payment on time and everything. So now they have considered here as well, and it is the financial indicator which we need to report in a BRSR code. 8 is about openness of the business, whether your company is just having sale, purchase, or a transaction with the related party, or they are having a open business. So few indicators which they are asking: how many purchase from the trading house, top 10 trading house, how much percentage is being covered. So how many players you are covering in terms of the openness of the business, this particular indicator is asking. And it is also being added in the BRSR disclosure and completely financial in nature. So it should be linked with your financial statement. So there are few participants earlier also who were asking about what is the due date of this BRSR assurance, core assurance. So my answer is that for this, as per circular, no particular date is mentioned, but before your financial statement, you cannot conclude your BRSR core as well, because there are certain details which is being required for a BRSR core. So once my financial statements are approved by board of directors, only after that assurance can happen on the BRSR core, and assurance provider can provide a assurance report or opinion on a assurance report. And the last is about enabling the inclusive development, principle 8, that we discussed. So this year in principle 8 also, one more segment which is being added is job creation in a smaller town. So they are asking how many percentage people from rural area, from semi-urban, from urban, and similar information they are asking. How you will define whether your area is rural, urban, or semi-urban. So for that, they have given the guidance that RBI notification we need to follow. And again, this indicator is completely financial in nature. This is about approach, how we should follow when it comes to the assurance on a sustainability report. So similar approach that we follow in the financial engagements, financial information engagement, we need to follow for the non-financial information engagements, which start from planning and scoping. We need to define our scope, plan, confidence and level of available information, evidence and information, initial risk assessment, and subject matter expert requirement. So as a CA firm, now multidisciplinary CA firms are also being allowed, and it's high time that we should add few more partners from other different domains which can help us to get a subject matter expert. Otherwise, we need to engage as a third party expert for like carbon offsetting, carbon footprint, and other aspect. Next is about process assessment and a criteria review. So we need to understand and evaluate the reporting system, process controls. We need to see how they are working. Walkthroughs need to be done, similar like we do in a financial statement part as well. Execution. So we need to review each and every aspect with respect to all assertions, which includes your completeness, accuracy, judgment, ownership, everything. So the assertion generally we follow for the financial audit, we need to follow for the non-financial audit as well. And last, we will have a reporting and the deliverables where BRSR core reporting is as per SEBI requirement, and BRSR disclosures also as per SEBI. Apart from that, if company is requested you to provide assurance as per international standard, so in that case, ISAE 3000 you need to refer, or if for greenhouse gas emission they requested, so 3400 you need to refer. These are few preconditions for sustainability assurance engagement, which I feel and try to capture in one particular slide. So normally it starts with understanding of the entity's process. First, we need to understand the entity with respect to their targets for sustainability achievement, what they want to achieve in terms of sustainability practice. We need to understand how they are relevant and linked with national and state priorities, linked with SDGs, and accordingly we determine the criteria of suitable for circumstances of the engagement or not. Second is appropriateness of the subject matter. So because this is about non-financial information, so with our expertise, we also need one expert for a particular subject, like when it's come to the carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emission. So we need a subject matter expert. When it's come to the biodiversity, we need a subject matter expert. So that appropriateness we need to identify. Suitability of the criteria. So again, relevance, completeness, reliability, neutrality, understandability, we need to see. Evidence availability is most important here, because this is something you will face as a challenge for next few years when you start your assurance practice for non-financial information, because currently many of the organizations are not ready for this type of assurance. So you will find difficulty to get appropriate evidence for your opinion. Access to the record will be little bit difficult, and in that case you need to guide them, you need to make them understand what exactly you want to provide your opinion or to frame your opinion. So roles and responsibilities of the appropriate party, this is one of the tasks which is important as a precondition. Change in criteria, restatement of the base year or previous year, as it is evolving on a regular basis, so that also we need to see. Availability of the criteria to intended user and engagement scope and a rational purpose. So these are the few questions which probably you can have, and you want someone to respond, like, are reporting boundaries clearly identified or defined in report? So that we need to respond. Framework standard company wanted to use for non-financial GRI, BRSR, SRSB. This is the most common question. Whenever the company will come to you, they will ask me, let us know first which framework is suitable for us and why. So for BRSR, if it is not listed, you need to make them understand why it is important to follow that. Which particular organization is required GRI, which particular organization should follow IR, which particular organization should TCFD. So basic understanding of all these framework is important for us. Like if your entity is more prone to environment aspect, so normally we suggest them TCFD or CDP, because that TCFD and CDP is more inclined towards the environmental aspect. But if it, you are a listed entity which is having an operation all over the India, connection with various other listed companies. So in that case, we recommend them an IR framework, which is already recommended by SEBI in 2017. So we mentioned that this is why this is important and how it is going to help them. So few questions probably that you also wanted to respond, and client probably through you, throw on us, like this is something, why it is important, method of the consolidation, what will be the system, what will be the IT environment, management controls, future oriented information, internal audit function, previously presented, third party involvement, everything. Again, this list is not exhaustive, just an illustration, and just to make understand that before going on a meeting, probably these type of the question will come to us, and we need to respond them considering based on ISA 3000 and 3410. Okay. IFC cover financial controls. Is there any framework or a requirement for controls around ESG reporting? So currently, if you ask me with respect to the requirement of controls, as such, no mandatory requirement, but because assurance, external assurance is required, so in that case, control should be there, internal audit mechanism should be there. Otherwise, you will get probably a qualified report or probably adverse opinion from an external assurance side, because consider yourself as an external assurance provider. At the end of the year, can you review each and every aspect of the non-financial information? Probably answer is no. We will do our audit on a sampling basis. How we get a more controls or how we get a more comfort on the data once we have a report from any other external agency who is coming regularly to the organization to review the controls. So if it is not available, so in that case, comfort is less to the external assurance provider, and maybe report can be qualified or certain explanation or limitation can be added. What is BRSR Lite? So BRSR Lite version is for unlisted or companies where BRSR is not mandatory. Mandatory application is not there. Exactly what is the difference between BRSR comprehensive and a BRSR Lite? So just for example, BRSR comprehensive format is talking about give the details of your product which is covering 90% of your turnover. Whereas my BRSR Lite is asking give the details of top 3 product from your list. So they are not asking to cover the 90% of your turnover. They are talking about, or they are asking for top 3 products. So this is something, a difference you find from comprehensive to Lite. We have slides, and probably that has been covered in previous session, so that you can refer through a channel as well. What is the ideal organ suggested for BRSR? Who should be the SPOC champion of the BRSR and report to whom? So this is again a step which should be taken by the company when they start their ESG journey, because once top has decided that this is something we want to achieve as a sustainability goal or a ESG goal, after that there should be a complete hierarchy that who will take care of that part. So now similar to like CFO or COO, the new top level position has been created in all the organization with CSO, which means a Chief Sustainability Officer. So in maximum of the listed company, at least 200 or 300 listed company, you will see that there is a full-time Chief Sustainability Officer who is taking care of all these requirements from top. Then that Chief Sustainability Officer is having a team, which you can call it as a champion of the BRSR or maybe any other name, who are taking care of all the targets which needs to be achieved by the company in near future. And then the execution team. Companies are also having a ESG committee separately at a board level, or a BRSR committee at a board level, who is responsible for all ESG initiatives and targets and the regular reporting and a review on that part. So this is how now companies are planning, and in initial stage they normally plan it and implement within the organization. So I'm just open for more queries now, and I hope overview of about assurance. All the participants are now enabled, already have with them, and principle 789 we covered in a detailed manner. So I request coordinators if there are more queries apart from which is being posted in a chat box. So you can just post it now or maybe ask so that we can respond to the participant. Okay, so there is one more query. For a listed company, is BRSR required only for the holding company where the market capitalization or market valuation is more than 100,000, which is listed, or it is required for wholly owned subsidiaries? So in BRSR report format, in section A point question number 13, that specifically asks company whether this reporting you are making or you are drafting for standalone or for consolidation. So currently it is up to the company whether they want to report it as a standalone or they want to include their subsidiaries and associate as well. If they respond question number 13 of section A as a consolidated, then in that case, they need to include initiatives from subsidiaries associate as well. And if they write it as a standalone, so in that case, standalone reporting is required. So this is up to the choice of company right now. No mandate from any of the regulatory or government side. I hope it is clear. Is there any research opportunity in BRSR? So yes, there are a lot research opportunities in BRSR because subject is evolving. You just need to see which particular principle or a segment somewhere you want to research. Like recently, RBI also issued a draft paper for banks for their risk assessment of credit assessment. So I have seen few research on the credit audits or ESG credit audits. ESG credit rating is also there. Then BRSR reporting is also having a lot section where we need to have, we need more understanding like PPP. So this is the first year. And when we were calculating the purchase price parity, there were certain queries, there were certain segments that, we want clarity. So just we need to find out where the clarity is not there, what research we can do with respect to the available domain from different other global countries, and then probably you can opt your best suitable subject.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your valuable insights with us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Now, as we conclude today's enriching session, we extend our heartfelt thanks to all our participants and our speaker for their engaging contributions and for fostering a deeper understanding of sustainability practices. We invite you all to join us in future sessions to continue this vital conversation. For those who wish to revisit today's discussion or catch up on previous sessions, we encourage you to view them on ICI TV available on SRSB channel. Thank you once again for your participation and we look forward to welcoming you to our future events. Stay connected and stay informed. Goodbye and take care.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you so much to SRSB committee for this fruitful series. And I similar request to all the participants, wherever you have query with respect to the previous principles or a few questions which were relevant to the previous segments. So you can refer to the previous series 1, 2, 3, where probably you will you will get a more clarity on a detail.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
कर दो